I think I've only done maybe one other movie besides this one today, Bloodsport, a very commonly known favorite amongst those who are fans like myself of JCVD and or remember those times fondly back in '88 when, you know, this guy and plenty of other action movie superstars were on top of the world, you know, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Steven Seagal, and however many others there were that don't immediately come to my mind, but they were on top of the world, running shit in the movies, in the box office. Van Damme was one of them, and despite the fact he had the heaviest accent out of all of them and looked the least convincing of a white man compared to all of them, as I mentioned. Well, I guess you could say Schwarzenegger too, he had an accent and it was like, but you know what, I think we forgave Arnold more because his accent was so, I'd say, brutal and more something worth laughing at, forgivable, I guess. So we kind of just put aside the fact that, you know, he was a robot, he was a this, he was a that, with like a very heavy Austrian accent in comparison to Van Damme, who had a very regular, not imposing, not overly masculine voice, a very soft-spoken voice, if anything, too. Plus, he had an accent, but he had a kind of softer, more foreign accent. Like Arnold's was more like a brutal, but still manly-ish kind of accent, too. So I think there's that comparison where we kind of draw the line of like Arnold had an accent, we kind of forgive it because, again, he was like so big and muscular and like looked like he could rip anyone's head off like in one clean swoop, versus Van Damme, who, upon looking at him without knowing about him or his background, at least in the martial arts, you think you could probably take him. Oh, he's a pretty boy, he's soft-spoken, foreign, whatever. I'm going to bash him over the head with a beer bottle. You know, quick 1, 2, 3. And as soon as you swing the bottle up over your head to swing upon his head, he's like kicked you 10 times in the mouth, knocked your teeth out or down your throat probably, and looking down upon you as you lay, you know, flat back on the bar floor. Like, I told you to mind your manners because I am Jean-Claude Van Damme. I am a gentleman, I am European. But if you get in my face, I will put my feet in yours in fair exchange. That is the way of my Shidoshi. Or something like that, you know. There were reports, I remember when I was younger, probably when I was still young, or maybe before I was born, that like Van Damme got beat up on the set of something. I don't remember exactly if it was, I don't think it was Bloodsport, but maybe something else. Probably because, well, this is one of his first things that got him like really over with the crowd, so mainstream appeal. So I think one of the bigger projects he did after Bloodsport is where he got allegedly, I think it's been proven otherwise, beaten up by, I think it was Chuck Zito, one of those like action stunt double guys who like were legit tough guy bikers or whatever. Chuck Zito, I know he used to be on Howard Stern a lot. He used to share those stories about, oh, this one's a pussy, this one's a pussy, this one can fight, but he couldn't beat me up, of course. But then again, he is one of those, Chuck Zito, shouts to him, no disrespect, but he is one of those, like, he made it sound like he never ever got beat up in his whole life. Which, if you're going to be honest, in training with boxing, martial arts, any sort of combat sports whatsoever, especially now in MMA, which is so popular, you're going to have to take a couple of L's because you're going to take on, like, masters or experts or veterans at some point while you're still a newbie, green, you know, wet behind the ears. You're going to have to take your lickings, pause, before you get to, you know, a level where you're secure enough to beat up other people without thinking too much into it, or, you know, grizzled vets per se. So if Van Damme got beat up, I'm sure it's because he had to practice pulling his punches and kicks, and God forbid he ever really hit somebody, because the last thing he wants, I'm sure, is a lawsuit on, of all sets, Bloodsport, which I don't think had the biggest budget. He's not exactly a superstar yet at that point. This is where he crossed over into the mainstream appeal, and he had everything working to his advantage. I mean, at least he was like the clickbait of the late 80s for a woman to go see a movie just because she would see his face, basically. I mean, a good-looking fucking man, as you can see in the poster right behind me. Great-looking man, pause in the sense of me alluding to whatever, but he's so good looking, even I could say it, you know, with a straight face, as straight as I am. Good looking guy, no denying that. Incredible build. Cool fucking guy because he's got all the martial arts skills to his advantage. So how could you deny any of that basically with Bloodsport? I think that's why Bloodsport has ended up becoming now 35 years, later, I'm acknowledging it's been acknowledged. It still is recognized and heralded as not just one of his better films, but also just, I wouldn't say a timeless classic, but I wouldn't also necessarily box it into just being a guilty pleasure. I don't want to reduce it to just that, because a guilty pleasure, for me at least, if you're asking me, since you're watching and listening, hopefully still, I appreciate you, I'm going to tell you anyways. In my case, I consider a guilty pleasure more, let's say, like the first Mortal Kombat movie. Not a great film, good, cool. I wouldn't strongly recommend it to anybody, you know, if I know they're of a certain age and or younger than me. But I would still sit down and watch that movie after a certain point. Like, I'll just stop everything I'm doing and watch it if it was like randomly on TV. Or if I'm in the mood, I'll throw it on. In comparison to the newer one that came out like, what, 1-2 years ago? The remake, the reboot, whatever. Not bad. It had the violence, it had the blood. We probably needed in the first one to make it more convincing and or ideally in our minds, you know, because we were like fresh off of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 with the head ripping and, you know, fatalities and the bloods and shit. You know, we finally got that with this newer one, but there was just something missing. Oh yeah, the new main character they made just for the movie was absolute trash. So we didn't need him at all. He was garbage, the actor and the character. So hand in hand, mano a mano, you know, we could have given him a fatality, a fucking brutal, bloody uppercut to get him off the fucking screen. The rest of the movie wasn't bad either, but then also there was a lot of focus on Sub-Zero, and then, you know, too much, I'd say, making him like this overpowered OP bad guy when really there's Shang Tsung, there's Goro, easily murdered by the fucking brand new character that no one liked in that movie anyway. But meanwhile, Sub-Zero is this whole menace just because he could freeze you to death pretty much. Which, I know, it's an imminent threat, but still, let's relax. I mean, him versus a 8-foot, 9-foot tall, 4-armed, you know, dragon man hybrid person. Did Goro breathe fire? No, he didn't. He wasn't like that much of a dragon. He was just like a dragon in size and stature, but not so much beyond, you know, having extra limbs as a big ass man, pretty much, with a man bun, mind you. So you can't really take Goro seriously anyway. But that's Mortal Kombat talk. Funny enough, we bring that up too because now it's been confirmed with the new Mortal Kombat, the resetting of Mortal Kombat 1 dropped in September this year, 2023. They finally got Van Damme for Mortal Kombat. Funny enough, it only took 12 entries into the whole fucking franchise and series to get him to come around and be like, you know what? I like this game, Mortal Kombat. I want to be a part of Mortal Kombat. Let me participate in tournament. I want to combat to define my mortality amongst the other humans, basically. No Jean-Claude, Mr. Van Damme, excuse me. It's not about fighting to the death for real. You only did that for pretend in the Bloodsport and the Kumite. We just want to use your skin as DLC for a character named Johnny Cage, who was supposed to be you, because the first Mortal Kombat was supposed to be a game based on Jean-Claude Van Damme of all people, but you turned us down. You said, I don't feel like doing that. That's not going to work for me. And hence Mortal Kombat was born off of that shit. So that is cool, like full circle, even though it's like, again, 12 games and what, like 93, 30, no, that's 20, hold on, 2003, 2023, 2003, 2013, 2020. Okay, 30 years later, finally, Jean-Claude Van Damme is actively participating in motherfucking Mortal Kombat. And we're going to be getting his voice. I thought, initially, at least when they made that announcement, that we would get an actual playable version of Jean-Claude Van Damme, since we had already gotten, you know, Rambo and RoboCop and, the Terminator in like, what was it, 11 or 10, whichever one it was. But no, apparently you're only getting the skin, as in DLC for Johnny Cage, but you will be getting Jean-Claude's voice, apparently, I think as one of the announcers or something like that. I don't know, I gotta read more into it, but that's pretty cool regardless. But now, back to the main focus, Bloodsport, right? That was just sidetracking briefly about Mortal Kombat. The interesting thing to me about Bloodsport has always been the whole story and or premise of Frank Dux actually existing. So apparently, there is a real life Frank Dux, which the whole story is based off of, and his adventures in Hong Kong, the seedy underground world of Hong Kong. And it's active recruiting of participants to take part in the Kumite and or Bloodsport, as it's called, where the rules are simple. You enter, you're either fighting to the death, you're fighting until someone gets knocked out, or you're fighting until someone says mate, or uncle, I give up, surrender, I've been rendered a pussy, I can no longer actively, physically participate in this blood sport. Apparently, though, there was a fourth rule, and they make it clear in the movie, which I was like, wait a minute. If that's the other rule, if that's the only other way to win this goddamn Bloodsport Kumite thing, why am I not going actively for that every time I have a match in the Kumite every single year? And I'd be undefeated like The Undertaker in that case, right? The fourth rule, the fourth way to win the Kumite or Bloodsport is to toss the motherfucker out the ring. Okay, not the ring, but off the platform where they fight on, right? Which, by the way, I love that whole setup of the movie itself, how they kind of give this whole feeling of grandeur to the platform, to the stage. And it's not until the very final fight, the finals with Frank Dux and Chong Li, where they elevate the ends of it. They make it kind of lift up a little bit, make it like much more elegant. Up until that battle, the final boss battle, I guess you could say, it's like flat ground level surfaced, right? But the rules apparently is, as long as you throw them out or off the platform shit, they lose. So I don't know why all the unnecessary fighting. It's a movie, I get it. The whole premise is to show the blood sport and, all these different guys with different fighting backgrounds and styles representing, basically like Street Fighter, USA, Japan, Brazil, Russia, India, and wherever else they come from. I don't know why I would waste my time as an active participant knowing that death is literally waiting for me. If I slip up enough, if I fuck around too much, if I start dancing or doing Fortnite shit in the middle of my fight, death is right there waiting to snatch me up. So why not just grab the guy? Because there were no women in Kumite. But then with today's standards, if, well, I'm a woman, I give birth to life, why can't I actively participate in a fighting tournament where death is an unlikely outcome, but it's an actual reality if it does go that far? And then there's going to be the women's Kumite. I'd love to know if in real life there either was a real life Kumite, which we'll get to in a little bit about the validity of Frank Dux and or his records, especially with the Kumite, in a bit. But I'd love to know if there really was or still is anything similar to like a Kumite, because I know with Muay Thai, which I love to learn, I like to, just for the workouts, just to get in shape, honestly. I'm not trying to be no fighter. I'd love to know if amongst them they got their own little underground little fight tourneys or like things you can like pretty much put some money on to see who's winning, who's losing, whatever. I'd be interested in that, to see that happen, see that go down. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the whole point, right? Why wouldn't you just snatch up somebody by their gi, by their shorts, by whatever fabric, because you can't fight naked, obviously. If not, you just, slap them around the face, slap their dick around, get them hard, and just like yoink them off the stage. Pause, if anything. I mean, you're fighting dirty. You are fighting potentially to the death anyway, so I'm sure some rules can be bent. It's not like you're necessarily going out there to kill, but death can be an end result, just like a casualty of war, per se, out on the fucking Kumite platform. Why not play that dirt if you have to? Flick the balls, slap the tip around, get him hard, grab him by there, and just yoink him off the stage, right? And then he'll be too confused, too much blood rushing to the dick to know to run back into the ring. And they can't do it anyway, because once they touch outside the platform, they lose, right? I would think I'd fight that way. Pause. It would be really gay to do so, or sorry, LGBTQ to do so. But why not do it that way? Save yourself the trouble, blood and sweat in your eyes and dirty tactics. Otherwise, too, we're really having to defend your whole life from another expert of a whole nother style. Maybe they got death on their fucking, wins, losses. I've got 50 wins, 10 losses, 3 decisions by KO. And I killed a couple of guys like 5 years ago. But, that's okay. It just happened by accident, I swear to God, kind of thing. I would think that. Now, when it comes to the whole story of Frank Dux and this Kumite, or Bloodsport, that's where I'm also confused too, because apparently Frank Dux, at least in the movie and or perhaps in real life, it seems like, he was some sort of either high-ranking or a soldier of sorts with real potential, who had to really be protected by the U.S. government because, of course, he was raised by his Shidoshi, or his sensei, I guess you could say in other terms, Tanaka, in Japan. to the point where he was raised side by side with Tanaka's own son. But the whole point of Tanaka's son existing, apparently, before he was killed, was to grow old enough to fight and enter the Kumite, a tournament where you could fight to the death for the sake of holding the trophy and the glory of, I've lived to see another year and the end of another tournament. Till next year, that is, with new participants and more guys who want to kill me to take my trophy from me. Yay! You know, toxic masculinity at its highest in the fucking 80s, of course. But he trained alongside Tanaka's son. Tanaka's son dies at some point defending the Tanaka honor in the Shidoshi, or his father. So he takes on the honor of doing so. But because he's also an American soldier of some high ranking, apparently, they don't want him to do that. So he has to escape by exposing how stupid one of the soldiers in charge of him or babysitting him is, telling him, oh, I need to take a shower. I am dirty and sweaty from working out. If you don't mind, I will scrub my balls, I will wash my ass, and you will let me go after. Because that's how, you know, Van Damme would talk after a certain point. He got too long-winded, so he could, like, take a big gulp and just, like, throw up the rest of his lines, kind of thing. He fools a guy, he dips out the shower, escapes to Hong Kong, as we mentioned again, into the Kumite, participate. So that's the story of Frank Dux, his whole, like, you know, fighting from the ground up to get into the Kumite, take part. He's got to prove himself against all these different guys to make it to the finals with Chung Lee, the eminent threat. I'm not going to say north or south because I can't tell honestly. I should know my geography better, but let's just say the Korean threat, because he's not from Hong Kong and or Japan. He's the Korean threat. Chung Lee, of course, the big bad boss who's killed before, undefeated apparently. No one wants to touch him and let alone fight him. But there he is as the big boss, the final boss level, you know, threat, eminent. So he gets up to him, they're fighting. Before they fight, of course, there's the best friend element with, what was his name, Jackson, I think? I forget, I'm bad with names, I'm sorry, in real life and also in the movie cast. Jackson's involved, he takes on Chung Lee before. He's a big, cocky, fat, you know, mullet-haired American with the American flag, you know, obligatory bandana wrapped around him somewhere. He's beating up on Chung Lee a little bit, took him out, at least in his mind he did, until Chung Lee comes back, you know, gives him a throat chop, probably broke his voice box temporarily, takes him out, stomps his head in, almost for dead, but he didn't die, so good, thank God. Of course, we don't need more death than that. But that fuels Frank Dux enough to want to go after the big baddie, even though he was most likely the one to win, because of course it's Bloodsport, he's a star, it's all about him. And this is where it gets confusing for me as well too, because this is the story of IRL Frank Dux. So apparently a real American who partook in this Kumite thing, which again is basically a underground fighting tournament. It's taking place in the underground seediness of Hong Kong, where again, death is a way of winning. So long as you kill the other person, you're not the one that dies, because then you take an L, and then you take an L in life, for real, for real. So with that being said, there's so much lore, there's so much I have to really openly question. And over time, considering this was back in 88 when this happened, this whole movie released, you know, leading up to 88, of course, the release of the movie, that's when the Kumite happened, according to the story of Frank Dux. But the only main source, the only valid, quote-unquote, source of the whole story, how it went down, what, the events occurred, the records held and broken, are all according to Frank Dux only. The one sole person who could actually tell you, hey, this is what I went through in Hong Kong, fighting in this tournament, fighting to the death. I beat up this guy, beat up that guy, almost killed that guy. I could have killed that guy, but I let him go because I had mercy, you know, because God bless America. And then I beat up the big bad baddie. And then after that too, I just stuck around because I was already the king of the Bloodsport. So I stuck around for like 10 years till I just felt like, you know what, I'd done enough. I'm so badass out here in the Kumite. I could fart in someone's eye, give them enough pink eye to blind them temporarily, just take about one roundhouse kick, and then I win again for like the 10th straight year. What fun is this anymore? And just retire willingly, right? That's pretty much, according to what I've read, what I've tried to research as best as I could, the story of Frank Dux and him dominating the Kumite. A crazy fun fact from in real life Frank Dux is that according to him, Van Damme was a decent, only a good choice, but only because he said Van Damme at that point, quote, was not in shape to partake in the Kumite if he had to. So that's what led to Van Damme bulking up a little bit. I think he gained somewhere between like what? Let me see right here. It took him 3 months to bulk up, put on some muscle to look quote unquote convincing enough to play the part of Frank Dux, on the big screen at least, as per the real life Frank Dux. Because he said otherwise, he's too beautiful, he's too pretty. I'd rather fuck him than fight him, honestly, because look at Van Damme. So let's put some pounds on him, get some muscle up and everything too, and then he'll look convincingly enough where I'll be okay with letting him pretend to be me, because I'm the real big man, the head cheese right here that won the death tournament pretty much for like 20 years straight. Because Hollywood wants my story, needs my story to tell a great story, as in Bloodsport, right? It starts getting more ridiculous the more you kind of like deep dive into it, with the whole Kumite thing. So again, the movie likes to emphasize at the end in the credits, this motion picture is based upon true events, with a grain of salt, in the life of Frank W. Dux, which from 1975 to 1980, Frank W. Dux fought 329 matches. He retired undefeated as the world heavyweight full contact Kumite champion. Now again, I don't know Kumite, if it exists, if it's legit, or if it's underground solely to this day only. But according to him, back in the mid-80s, he's the one that said, I went through all this. He wrote it down. He made it look all beautiful and fluffed it up for Hollywood for the sake of, sending them a script about his life and times in, again, 330 matches in this to the death tournament, pretty much, that he won all of them. He didn't lose one time at all. He retired undefeated. And again, to emphasize, retired undefeated as the world heavyweight full contact Kumite champion. Not partial, not half-assed, not by contact. No, full-on contact Kumite champion. Meaning, if I killed you, it's because I fully contacted you. Not, I didn't, fart too hard in your direction and, you passed out because of that, or you tripped off the fucking platform and died or lost that way. No, I fully grabbed you, I manhandled you, full contact, I defeated your ass and 329 others pretty much. This is where it starts to get a little bit more ridiculous too after that shit. So keep in mind, again, 330 matches, retires undefeated, world heavyweight full contact Kumite champion, right? Now, we delve more into the records he set. The records, of course, set in the Kumite as he partook in all 330 matches. He still holds 4 world titles according to the Kumite standards, which, they're not verified by Guinness. They're not, is it Guinness? Yeah, I was thinking Guinness Stout. They're not verified by Guinness. They're not verified by the Olympic Committee or board. But this is according to Frank Dux when he told Hollywood, hey, these are all the records I broke along with my true ass story, because it's the 80s and there's no way of fact checking, and no American wants to go all the way to Hong Kong to be like, hey, is there such a thing as Bloodsport out here, guys and gals? Kumite, anyone, please? Can someone point me in the right direction to this Kumite thing? I need to see the real thing in the flesh, please. He's got fastest knockout in the Kumite, which is allegedly 3.2 seconds. So you count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, boom, you're knocked out, according to Frank Dux, of course. We're not validating or saying he's right and or telling the truth. We're just saying this is according to the records that exist in the mind, the mental archives of a Frank W. Dux. The fastest punch with a knockout. Even crazier now. You thought 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, boom, was enough, right, for a fast knockout? Fastest punch with a knockout. 0.12 seconds. So you don't even get to the full 1 Mississippi. You go 1 Mississippi, and that's it, you're knocked out with 1 punch. That's according to Frank Dux, of course, and that's, co-signed by the Kumite, if it exists or not. Then you got the fastest kick with a knockout. That one registered at 72 miles per hour. So you can imagine, I don't know, going full blast, hauling ass on the left lane of some highway, whichever one's closest to you, at 72 miles per hour. That's still a decent enough speed to get you from point A to point B. And that's as fast as his kick was. Pretty much like that, right? Blink and you can't even think of missing it. It's just, you absolutely missed everything. and there goes your life. Because he probably, according to Frank Dux, kicked you in the temple, you knocked out. Then they found out later in the hospital that you were dead the whole time. And he's like, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm American. In America, we have such a thing as death that happens by accident. So, can you implement those rules into the Kumite too? And they probably, let me guess, according to Frank Dux, rewrote the whole rules of the Kumite, Bloodsport, the best suit him because he's the one that held 330 wins, no losses whatsoever this whole time, the whole existence he spent as a world heavyweight full contact Kumite champion. Yeah, sure, Frank Dux, we believe you. And also, according to the movie and its credits, which I'm sure he had, input on, and he wanted it to really cater to his ego. Subsequently, Mr. Dux founded the first American ninjutsu system, Dux Ryu. I have no idea what that is. I did not look that up, I'll be honest. I didn't feel like looking it up. But honestly, and I'm no martial arts expert, the farthest I ever got was Taekwondo, red belt status when I was like 9-10 years old, somewhere around that time. So, Dux Ryu does not sound appealing and or tough. No offense if it is a legit thing that's still around to this day, but I don't trust a guy that calls something like that a martial arts Dux Ryu to be something I really want to delve into like that. But let's see. Again, as I mentioned previously, Frank Dux, the real Frank Dux, Frank W. Dux, not pretend on the big screen Jean-Claude Van Damme pretty boy ass motherfucker playing Frank Dux, or put up your Dukes, as the Asian Jimmy Hart was like hyping him up for. I liked him, he was funny, but he was like, how are you in Hong Kong, you speak that perfect, well, not the greatest English, but you have all those analogies and jokes like an American would make, probably, but whatever. We're not here to dispute his validity. We're here to dispute the validity of Frank W. Dux. In real life, Mr. Big Deal, hot shot, death tournament winning ass, no losses ever taken, Frank W. Dux. W's in his fucking name. So, of course, he wouldn't know about no L's. There's no L's in his whole name, unless his W stands for William, and he's got 2 L's that he's got to live with his whole life. But then he'll probably say, no. It's like, what's a W name without L's in it for a man? Whoa. I bet you at some point said, oh, the W's for whoa. That's my real legal registered name. I guess if you look them up now in the yellow books or yellow pages, whatever, it's probably Frank Whoa Dux. Because whoa, I won 329 matches in the Kumite overseas, and I had to retire. I couldn't lose. I couldn't take an L. I don't have no L's in my fucking whole name, first, last, middle, whatever. All I got is a big fat W in the middle of my name. That's all I know about. Winning, taking W's. That's it, right? Snatching them up. So again, the in real life IRL Frank Dux, he was assigned as the movie's fight coordinator, and again, that's where he said, I like Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he's a little too pretty and scrawny to play me, of course, in the movie about my life and times in, the underground fighting to the death circuit in Hong Kong. So I need him to bulk up, I need him to look convincing. And if anything, fuck it. He can keep his face the way it is. He can keep his hair perfectly moosed and or styled, because that's how I looked, of course. And when I took off my red gi with my yellow belt, all the women fainted, at least in my mind, because they didn't allow women there, in the Bloodsport. But if there were women there, they would have fainted upon sight of me. Not so much with Van Damme, but me more importantly, right? That's what he says. That's according to him. He was assigned as the fight coordinator. I would think he might have been able to throw a few punches and kicks to look convincing enough. But then again, if you got Jean-Claude Van Damme already, who's been known to prove on the big screen, wherever you looked at him, whenever you saw him, kick after kick and this and that, feet flying everywhere like you're in a foot fetish club, forum, whatever. I think it would be enough of Van Damme, but I guess maybe he could prove himself with a couple of punches and kicks. They let him stick around and whatever. Okay. Oh, and by the way, according to him also, the most consecutive knockouts in a single tournament record held by Frank Dux is, get this, 56 in total. 56 knockouts. So 329 victories, 56 of those were, hold on. Okay, now I'm confused, because he's saying 329 total matches. And that's in the movie's credits too. You can check that out as well. Of those total wins amassed, he's got 56 knockouts in one tournament. So God forbid if he really did have to do a Kumite in real life, how many fights do you have in one tournament? Because I would think if there was like such a thing as a bracket or like a King of the Ring style for Kumite, you don't gotta go through you don't even gotta go through 10 matches to get to the finals. I would think for the sake of fighting, you probably have to go to like maybe 8, and then that's it for each person. But if he's going through 56, holy shit, what is it, like 500 matches every tournament? That's too many fucking people involved. But whatever, that again, this is according to Frank Dux. We're here to question his validity if he didn't actually do whatever he said he claimed to do in the Kumite in real life. But whatever, let's put that aside too. So that leads to ask the question, was Frank Dux, after all, since again, it's the 80s, it's his story, he pitched to Hollywood, they bought it from him because it does sound sexy enough, at least, an American boy overseas in Hong Kong, kicking ass, accidentally killing if that comes of the end result of a fight, over in Hong Kong, in the underground, where it's just, literally swept under the rug as far as like someone dying. Oh God, we fucking killed 5 guys tonight. All right, just throw them out in the back. We'll chop them up and make them into tomorrow's, Chow Yun Fat, whatever. No, that's an actor, right? I mean, Beef Chow Fun. Sorry, Beef Chow Fun. Excuse me. No offense with that. So we're left to wonder if, of course, any of it's true, because this is again what he proposed, what he gave to Hollywood, what he handed over as a script, as a screenplay for Bloodsport to happen. I mean, Van Damme did already have Kickboxer before this, and now he's got Bloodsport. He likes it, he snatches it up, he wants to be a part of it. I think that's pretty much set and done right there. But then again, it is those times back when, where in the 80s you could get away with stuff like this, sadly enough. I mean, you have Stallone, who proposed the whole story of Rocky, but he didn't base that off his life. But you got this whole thing with Frank Dux, where he's saying this was my life up until just recently. Now that I'm back in the States and away from, kicking too much ass over in Hong Kong, I had to retire. I got things to do in my life besides kicking ass left and right and or killing every once in a while. By mistake. By mistake, I killed. They died at the mere thought of having to take me on. That's most of the times why they died. If I killed by mistake, I swear to God, it's because I kicked so much ass and I hit too hard that they will buckle, they'd forget to defend themselves, and when I punch them in the temple, and they collapse. One time, you weren't there, obviously, so you can't, prove this or not, but one time, I gave this guy an uppercut so hard, I knocked his head off his shoulders. It flew, it had some hang time on there, like, Michael Jordan in the near future. I don't know why I'm making that reference in 88, but whatever, he wasn't around then. But his head got so much hang time that they were questioning if gravity existed anymore, because it just wasn't coming back down. He flew right through the roof. He went into the heavens. He gave God a dap and came back down after I was like already gone for the day. So then, they confirmed the guy was dead. Besides just having to look at his like headless body just plopped on the floor. But they gave me the W anyway, because they were like, they had to move along. Every tournament you got to do like 700 fights pretty much, right? Just to survive and make it to the finals. That's according to Frank Dux. Did he just have a really vivid imagination? Was that script, the screenplay of Bloodsport, that sexy, that well put together, that convincing? That was Hollywood or whoever he was lucky enough to get into the hands of that desperate for something for Van Damme to do on the big screen after Kickboxer, lean into everything else he's done since Bloodsport? Was it that convincing that they had to make this movie? And of course, if it is that sexy, Hollywood is known to do this, of course. Take stories from books, wherever other source materials they may get it from, and make it appealing to the big screen for the sake of the movie viewer and or goer. I get that. But does that mean, even back when they couldn't probably confirm any of this to be true? And I'm not saying he's a flat out liar. I'm not saying that either. But I'm saying grain of salt is how we got to take the events occurred in Bloodsport, because it is the movie in the fucking credits that says that. It's not me saying that. It's not me just wanting to doubt it because of whatever. It's the movie saying at the very end, this motion picture is based upon true events in the life of Frank W. Dux. He had to retire from 330 matches and straight up W's because he kicked too much ass. That's first world problems. I kicked so much ass I had to retire. They didn't know what else to do with me besides going to one more tournament, go straight W's, no L's, and then everybody knows the end outcome result. It's like if we're We went out to go see Roman Reigns now, like 1,000 days plus as champion. Who's going to beat him is the big question. And at some point, it's like, do I even care if he gets beat? It's just boring at this point, right? That's what Frank W. Dux was saying happened to him, unfortunately. Why? But life is so tragic. I won so much that now I have nothing else to do with life but question, am I that great? Am I that perfect? Will anyone ever defeat me? What's the next level for me? Frank W. Dux, right? All I get is W's. All I amass is wins and W's and asses getting kicked left and right. Or, faces getting broken via my fists, pretty much, right? And then there's also the fun fact that at some point he changed the story and said, oh, no, it wasn't in Hong Kong. It wasn't over there. No, I went to the Kumite in the Bahamas. That's where I went. And again, no one can confirm apparently. Because then apparently he has no military records either. So you got to question if he was even a military guy. Because then that gives the whole mysterious background of Van Damme in the movie being a military guy. The army really doesn't want him to go over there. So is he already like Universal Soldier important, time cop important, or what? Because they don't want him over there at all. I get it, putting the soldier at risk, and salute to all the forces too, and thank you for your duty. But they're worrying so much about one soldier that they got to put two agents on him, a black guy and a white guy, and a young Forrest Whitaker as the young black guy with a horrible hairline. I'm not one to speak on hairlines. I got no hair, so just hear me out. He had a really terrible, a fully intact one, but poorly shapen up, and it's so crooked and off-center and balance. You would think he was already cross-eyed or dead-eyed, whatever, and he was doing it himself. No, they had a fucking makeup person, girl, I'm assuming at that time. Maybe there were no barbers established yet or people that would be up to task for a black man's hair, so maybe that's why they kind of did him dirty and just let him rock the whole movie with a horrible hairline. But, we're not here to talk about Forrest Whitaker. Is it Forrest Whitaker or Whitaker? I'm sorry, no disrespect, but you know what I'm saying? There's that to consider. And then you got him switching up the story at some point. No, the Kumite happened in the Bahamas. No one was there, of course, from the military to validate. But, you got to take me my word. That's what fucking happened. So then Hollywood did its thing by changing it to Hong Kong, apparently, because, anti-communist propaganda. Who knows what the end result was. But I would think, okay, if I'm Hollywood, it would be less interesting. A tournament where death is heavily involved. You could fight to the death, literally, and consider that a win. And no legal ramifications afterwards. But it's not so appealing in the Bahamas with like the sun setting. It's all beautiful, perfect weather, bikinis here and there as far as the eye can see. I get that if that's what happened too. But then he switches up his story saying it's the Bahamas, and then Hollywood has to change it to fucking Hong Kong of all places too, right? It was a secret martial arts tournament. Even the military didn't know about it, which, military intel, I'm guessing back in the mid-'80s, would be smart enough to pick up your location if they really wanted to. Even if you're saying, oh my God, I'm going to Asia, guys, and then really you're in the Bahamas fighting in the death tournament, right? I think they would fucking know how to track you, even the fucking like the mid-'80s. So come on, Frank W. Dux, excuse me. I would think maybe in his mind, he took some time off or got some vacation time from, active duty perhaps, or I don't know, about to retire, whatever. Maybe he went to the Bahamas. He was, laid out on a resort, enjoying himself, taking him some sun. Maybe by mistake, he stuck his leg out, tripped up a fucking like one of those pool boys or whatever, or someone bringing him a Mai Tai, whatever. Tripped him up. He fell headfirst into the pool because of his extended leg out. And he said, while mid-apology, hopefully, to the pool boy, dumping him into the fucking pool head first. And he was like, wait a minute. I could always say this guy picked a fight with me. I kicked him once so hard, he flew into the pool and drowned and died. I took that W, and I got W in my name. Why not? And then he got busy writing the whole fucking premise of Bloodsport in the Bahamas. The whole story as we know, but just with the backdrop of the Bahamas there too. Fighting to the death in the Bahamas. It sounds, honestly, more like a horror movie you'd watch on Tubi, or one of the free streaming services where all they have is terrible fucking movies. Like if they got, let's just say 300 movies in total. Maybe like 25 of them you might actually know and or recognize, and maybe 10 of them are actually good, and then the rest is absolute shit that they just have up there to like turn into memes, if anything, too. That would sound, a Bloodsport in the Bahamas would sound more like that. A very ass Tubi movie at best. But hey, he wrote it convincingly enough, or maybe he hired a writer, then he got into the hands of someone in Hollywood, and it became the Bloodsport we love and herald so much. Where, you know, at this point, 35 years later, I love this movie. It's a guilty pleasure for me. I'm not saying it's great or classic or nothing. I would say easily, this might probably be Van Damme's best performance, out of all things considered. According to Mr. Frank W. Dux, or Frank Winning Dukes, the whole time he was apparently undercover CIA in the Bahamas, escaping from like the hectic life of being a non-stop winning machine in fighting tournaments to the death involved, where the CIA and the whole government told him at some point, okay, you gotta stop. That's enough. You did too much kicking all this ass and taking all these lives, by accident, of course. You gotta come back home, son, please. It's enough already. You've done your service. We defeated too many bad guys thanks to you. We should have used you for terrorism, you know, in the years upcoming in the 90s, but still, you did enough. Be a good boy, come on back home to the States, pretty much. Because he says, too, at some point, that the feds kept chasing him just to stop him because he was too much of a man, too much of a winner, I guess. It's a guilty pleasure, I'll admit. It's a fun movie. Again, I'd say, surprisingly, you know, I think the biggest enemy Jean-Claude Van Damme or Frank Dux had to face in the movie was absolutely the English language, because it's not even like 3 minutes in and already you got Van Damme about to go into the shower. It's like, hey, what's the problem? You know, as we know Van Damme, and we love him for, of course, the accent, the charge, the accent, the charm, the mispronunciation that goes with the heavy Belgian accent. Is it Belgian? No, Belgian accent. Forgive me if you're Belgian out there or from Belgium and I'm messing that up. But that accent from Belgium, it's heavy. It's like he's talking through a mouthful of waffles and syrup. Belgian waffles and syrup, of course. But I'd say, you know what, the biggest enemy he's got to face the whole time is absolutely the English language. In this movie and many others, but it's a charming accent. It's not an annoying or threatening accent. It's just like, you know what, I'd love to hear a full-blown story from him just for the sake of hearing that accent just go crazy for like 5 minutes or so. Hey, you guys, I ordered a round of beers for us to sit down and enjoy at the bar. So, gather round, everyone. It's time for Jean-Claude's story of the week. And these will become movies. I will become movie star, and you will enjoy me pretending to kick ass. Unless you ask Chuckzito, he kicked my ass in real life. But only because I was drinking too much. Wink, wink. I like to have fun. That's what it is.
Let's say 1991, 1992 version of Black Panther with Wesley Snipes. Having Wesley Snipes attached to the project would have maybe brought some more money and or budget to the film, but I still don't think enough to make a suit look convincing. It probably would have been like that bondage looking ass leather like Michelle Pfeiffer had on in whichever Batman movie she was in too. Because back then, the leather looked so rubbery on all these costumes. If you look at the Batman movies, it almost looked like latex. Guaranteed there was a lot of chafing in the costume, whoever was wearing the shit. They were probably squeaking as loud as like SpongeBob boots were. Imagine the disrespect of having Wesley jumping and flipping and roundhouse kicking all over the place as Black Panther, but then they got to worry about like taking out the audio, the squeaks all around in post-production.
Either way, I recommend it. Out of a 2-star thing, I'd probably give it like a 1.5, you know, personally speaking. In general, I'd probably give it a 1. It's not great, it's not a classic, but to me, I put it up there as one of my very guilty pleasures. It's one of the things I watch on my birthday because I feel like it's a gift to me. A gift that Frank W. Dukes gave to us in life in general, and or, you know, so you can feel like a man again, watching a real man handle his business out there in Hong Kong, even though Frank Dux said he did it all in the Bahamas in real life, which may or may not have happened. But then again, if you got access to tap into the CIA, maybe they can tell you, hey, back in 1980, whatever the fuck, did you guys have to track down Frank W. Dukes, the whole guy that inspired the story and or movie of Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, released in 1988 at all? And if they even like say, you know, we cannot confirm or deny, then I'll be really pissed, because that means this whole time he was telling the truth, apparently. We don't know. Grain of salt as we take all these stories, especially the one of Bloodsport. Who knows if it's true or not, but it's still a great movie nonetheless, in my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments below.
Yo, it's over. Alright, it's over. It's over. Move the mic. Move the mic.
Thank you.
Alright.